bring the meeting to order and ask that roll be called.
Blue. Here. Bozeman.
Here.
Disharum.
Here.
Holzhauser. Here. Humbles.
Here.
Reed. Here. Sally.
Here.
Thank you. Would everyone please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We will now move on to the public participation portion of the meeting, and at this time, Dr. German will begin with the superintendent's report.
Sure.
And first of all, though, before you do that, I'd just like to welcome Councilman Dennis Sear to the meeting. He's the 5th District City Council person, so represents a lot of our districts. So thanks for coming tonight.
As far as my superintendent's report, before I start, I would like to take a moment, if you would join me in just a moment of silence. We lost a key educator in the Peoria area by the name of Randy Simmons yesterday. He was a good person, so I think it'd be proper and respectful to pay our respects to him at this time. If you would join me, please. Thank you. First thing, student recognition. We have the DHS Knitting Club, sponsored by Mr. Tom Oakers, and Mr. Scott Adrian will present that for us, please.
Okay, so you're probably aware that one of the biggest things we try to do is create opportunities for students. And this year, we have a new club called the Knitting Club. So I'll be honest with you, I'm not real familiar with knitting. And I wasn't sure how well received it would be. I didn't realize that Mr. Oakers was such a knitter himself. But Maddie Johnson came to us, and she wanted to start a knitting club. And I got her, and Eddie Smith was today, along with Mr. Oakers, and they knitted 91 little hats, for the American Hearts Association, and the campaign was Little Hats, Big Hearts. So they pumped out, there's like 20 students, a little over 20 students in the knitting club, and they pumped out 91 of those little hats. And they really were well received by those families that were able to get one of those. So this is a nice initiative, one that's good for our students to be able to give back to somebody who needs our help. And I appreciate Mr. Oakers. A lot of our people don't understand, a lot of our clubs, we have sponsors that aren't paid for that. They're volunteer out of the goodness of their hearts. And we certainly appreciate and want to facilitate our students' good ideas. So Maddie Johnson and Addie Smith, thank you so much. We've got a couple
For your requests, none at this time. Third item, the April board meeting and seating of the new board. We have our regular meeting scheduled for April 17th, and then the following week, April 24th, that's after the elections, we will then have the special board meeting to seat the board members that are being elected at that time. On January 22nd, we had our district leadership team meeting in the library. This is our second meeting of the year. This time we worked on creating SMART goals that were prioritized through the last meeting, and those were around curriculum and facilities. And so each group created a couple SMART goals. So I think we had 14 different ones, and now the next step is to take those together and try and maybe see if there's some commonalities between the different groups, see if we can't narrow that down to 4 or 5 real solid goals for implementation, possibly for next year. So that group is moving well. A quick calendar update. We have used all 5 of our snow days. No offense, Pete, but you're not the prettiest thing to wake up to at 5 o'clock in the morning. Pete and I spent a lot of time together here lately. This morning was another instance. But May 31st will be our last day of school for student attendance because of the fact that we have used our 5 emergency days to this point. The 5 hours is a clock day. There's some work being done on that. I haven't heard any finalization as far as some of the exemptions that are going to be allowed to that, but that really won't affect our overall calendar for next year. We kind of anticipated that coming. The only effect could be the potential, if they totally do away with it, the online learning days that we had planned for the parent-teacher conferences, which would only impact some of our students because student-led conferences count towards that. That is a student engagement piece, so that's a large portion of our students that do that. And we'll cross that bridge when we get there, but last I heard out of Springfield is that was going to be allowed. So they're working on that, and as it gets finalized, they'll let you know. Working with the DEA, we had our monthly association meeting yesterday, went well. We're still kind of waiting on the 3% cap language passed out of committee to potentially repeal that. That would dramatically alter the course of our conversations and negotiations, and both sides are aware of that. So Mr. Hackett is working with Sarah and John as far as getting common documents, so when we go to look at proposals, we're working off the same document and are in agreement with the numbers and where they came from. So I believe they meet tomorrow to work on that some more. So we're doing some groundwork before it even starts, so I'm looking forward to that. Mr. Adrian and Ms. Bagby and Mr. Johnson had their D squared, D2 dual degree, whatever you want to call it, and AP night the other night. It was quite the strobe light show, because that was the night the power was flickering in and out, probably 15 or 20 times throughout that night. They did a nice job of adapting to that circumstance and presented some pretty good information that, not only did I appreciate as superintendent, but as a parent of high school freshmen, kind of learning some of the opportunities that are available that he spoke of earlier to students academically. So I thought he did a real nice job, and he'll have more on that type of information tonight. Just a quick construction update. Pete Mangieri is actually presenting at Bradley tonight. He's a guest speaker at a class. And Tom is on vacation, so I'll do the construction update. With that being said, the canopy bids came in last Thursday for DBMS, so the kids have a structure similar like DMS and the high school here to stand under if it's raining while they're waiting for the bus. We had budgeted $180,000 for those bids. It came in at $182,000, so right where we thought it would be. All the other things that we've done, the commissioning of the building, the entire building, as far as the HVAC controls, it's never quite been right. It doesn't run as efficiently as it should. And a lot of that's just the controls, how much fresh air, if you're bringing in, we have one controller and it was bringing in 80% fresh air when it was cold days. So you imagine the work that that boiler's got to do to heat that air back up. Those types of things, basically come in, let's wipe all those computer programs clean and reprogram it as one unit so that they're working together and not against each other or in opposite of one another. One's heating, the other's cooling. That is built in, and then the smart boards for the new additions and the existing classrooms to get those all done. We're still, the needle on that budget has not moved. And we're still looking at being 100,000 at a minimum, probably closer to 200,000 under bid, just because the bids came in better than anticipated, even with the change orders that we've added. So we're in good shape on that. And that's all I have at this point.
Can I ask you one quick question on the D2 that you mentioned?
Yeah.
Where does when we get money for average daily attendance, does that money for those students who go to those colleges, did they get that money, or do we still collect that?
They don't do ADA anymore. That was done away with
changed
evidence-based
everything?
funding. Now it's based on enrollment.
Oh, very good. Okay.
Thank you very much. Okay, at this time, we will move on to public comments. Is there anyone who wishes to address the board? Please raise your hand if you'd like to address the board. Okay, Mr. Adrian? So I need to...
Yeah, you should probably read.
Okay, so I'm going to have to read
Place your
paragraph
right
about it,
hand
even
on the
though you
Bible.
probably have it memorized. Before addressing the board, I would like to remind you of our process. Per Board Policy 2230, we ask that when addressing the board, please identify yourself and be brief. Comments shall be limited to 5 minutes. The speaker is asked to please conduct oneself with respect and civility towards others. Individuals less than 18 years of age are permitted to address the board if accompanied by a parent or guardian. The board typically does not engage in two-way conversations during the public portion of the meeting. Any follow-up response will be addressed by the administration at a later date. To be respectful of others and protect confidentiality, complaints against individual students, staff members, or board members, either named or unnamed, shall not be orally presented to the Board of Education. Such complaints should be put in writing, signed by the person or persons making the charges, and delivered to the Board of Education Secretary. So at this time, could you please introduce yourself and let us know what you're speaking about?
Yep, my name is Scott Adrian of Dunlap, Illinois. I'd like to take this minute to, I've been involved in administration real sense of the community that those two have built at Dunlap Valley, because all the teachers participated in the celebration, even reluctantly. None of us want to get out there and do a dance with cheerleaders or whatever else, but they all did it in good faith. I think it was Mrs. Hockmuth and Mr. Vogel who rode the fan buses down there. We had over 100 kids, but when we got there, again, from an administrator standpoint, sitting in a parent's chair, everything was so well organized. And I mean, you could tell that they weren't just doing it because they felt like they had to. They were genuinely happy for the kids, and they wanted to provide that moment for the students and for the parents. And I just had such great appreciation. I didn't know what to do, sit there and watch them do that, but it was a kind of an awkward sense, but it was really well done. And I can't tell them how much we appreciate that, because they created that moment for the families and for the kids. So those two went out of their way along with their staff, so I really appreciate that.
Thank you so much. Is there anyone else who would like to address the board? Okay, seeing no one, this will conclude our public participation portion of the meeting, and we'll now move on to the information discussion items. The school activity account reports are included in the board packet. Are there any questions? Information regarding the high school random drug testing for the month of January is available in the packet. Any questions? Mrs. Bowman and Mr. Andrews are here to present the results of the CSCI survey. Welcome.
Thanks. Good evening. The CSCI is a survey that we give every fall to gather different information for our balanced scorecard and really to provide us with good feedback kind of on where we are related to climate and culture. And so we're going to walk you through a few components from the results we got back from this year, and then share a little bit of data over time as well, seeing as this was the third year we implemented this particular survey. So.
And the big thing behind this, why schools do this across the state, is because through Senate Bill 7, the Performance and Education Reform Act, and which will eventually go with ESSA for the summative growth or the summative designations that each building gets, they recognize that there are multiple things that go into making sure and how to measure that schools are providing an effective education for students. It goes beyond just a proficiency score on an assessment. So this is all about measuring the climate of the school, which is why it's called the CSCI. Another acronym for you this month. It's the the Comprehensive School Climate Inventory. That's what that stands for. And so the benefits of it is that it engages the community, and through that engagement, we're otherwise able to gain school-wide perspectives from both the students, the staff, and then parents as well. And within that, we're able to recognize school district strengths, and then as it is something that we have done, as Heather had said, for 3 years, we're able to see trends over time, and making sure that when we're making changes to otherwise bolster certain areas, that those are effective ways to mitigate those problems. So the 6 dimensions of that, the first 3 is safety, teaching, learning, and interpersonal relations, and then institutional environment, social media, and staff perspectives. And this is just how the process works throughout the year. We give the survey out in October. It's sent out to parents. Staff has the opportunity to take it during the workday as well, and then students obviously take it during the instructional day as well, trying to take that at a time that it has minimum effect on instruction, but realizing the benefit from the data, we definitely try to accommodate that as best we can. And then data reporting is given to us typically in December. It just kind of depends. I think this year we got it in January, the final reports that we needed.
Break.
Yeah. So a little later, but from that we get that, and then we push that out to the buildings as we get the summative report and then the individual building reports. And then from that, it's just data analysis, looking at the different domains and what need attention. And then that becomes part of goal setting and SIP considerations by the individual schools from the rest of the year. Seeing how that data either reaffirms things that are currently going on within the school building now, if there's anything large and glaring, obviously look to change that right away, but otherwise use for planning purposes in the future. And then the largest thing is in July, and then in November, those measures are used to update the balanced scorecard. That's where we get that, the bulk of that data. Here, and I'm not going to read all this for you, but you can see the response rates for the students, staff, and the parents. And compared to previous years, some response rates are down at different buildings. It's not necessarily uniform, just one category. evaluations of all schools that do use the CSEI inventory, the parent response rate is low. The lowest measure, obviously, there's a little bit more control with your staff and your students.
Right, always want to try and shoot for at least 30%. They say that's really a target. So most of ours are above that, but we do have a few that are close or a little bit below. So that's something we always want to make sure we're monitoring and keeping a close eye on. It's funny, we went and did a visit the other day, and I had another principal say to me, "Have you taken your child's survey?" And I said, "Yes, I've taken it for both buildings." They said, "Because we're having a terrible time getting response rates." So I don't think it's just unique to us as a district. I think it's widespread. But it's just something we want to continue to monitor and make sure we're doing everything we can to get people to fill it out and respond. 'Cause that
It's so
feedback's
long.
important.
It's
It
so
is.
long.
And we'll talk a little bit more about that.
It seems short with the 6 domains, but there are many different components to it.
Right.
As you'll get to see a little bit of it broken down here, those different domains then have subcategories that go along with it. So this slide and then the next slide are going to pretty much give the same type of information, just in different ways. And that's, they say anything that's below a factor median of 3, that's going to be a domain that you want to, or components that you're going to want to look at and try to find out why is it that those scores are so low. How you go about doing that is obviously completely up to the school. Additional surveying can obviously be one thing, but you don't want to do too much there. But there are different ways that you can obviously view that, take a look at discipline reports, things like that. But the 3 areas that showed the lowest, even though they weren't below that 3, would be the sense of physical security from the student's perspective. Strangely, that was ranked a little bit higher by staff and parents. Sense of social emotional security, which makes sense. It's become a larger focus within districts within the past half of a decade. And then social media as well. All the encumbrances that come along with that. And this next sheet, or this next chart is just, again, it's showing the same information. Those that have a higher number are, well, again, areas to target growth. So they're just 2 different charts that they provided us for us to make sure that we're targeting those areas. And you'll see that some numbers are repeated and then some numbers are skipped, and that's because if they were tied, then they received the same number and then the next number was granted.
Sorry. And I took this, but I can't remember what it pertained to. The social media aspect, are they talking about how well is the school represented on social media, or how do they feel about the use of?
It would be about how social media, well, it does have that, but more or less it's how social media is impacting the student's day.
Okay, like other social media, okay, because that is a big issue.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yes. So some strengths would be safety rules and norms, pretty solid there, as well as social support from the adult's perspective. Our respect for diversity. Diversity is definitely one of our strongest suits within our district, as well as our physical surroundings. We're very fortunate to have some pretty great buildings and opportunities for our students. And then the areas for improvement, which I previously said, sense of social emotional security and social media, which is it's always going to be about what we'll be looking at.
So then over time, we broke down the data by each of the subgroups. So you can see over the 3 years, these 10 subgroups are broken down, and the scores are really relatively close, but you see a little dip in some different areas. I'm just going to show this to you as an overview, and then I have a slide for each of the domains highlighting some of the strengths and different areas that we're continuing to work on. So there's the student one. Staff results over time are here as well. So you see a couple different areas, that stay pretty steady. You see some that drop maybe a little bit, but nothing extremely significant, nothing more than maybe 0.3 points when you're taking a look at that. And then same thing with our parent-guardian results. Again, pretty solid there. Again, everything's above that level 3, which is important that we want to note, but we do have some areas that have maybe trailed off a little bit that we definitely want to dig into and take a closer look at. So we break down the safety rules and norms because that was one they're consistently rated pretty high across all of the groups. But that social emotional safety is the one that we need to continue to focus on. And I think we've done a lot with that. We now have our counselors at all of our elementary buildings. We've added somebody at the high school arena to address some of those. That was just done within the last month. But I think that's just an area that we need to continue to stay on top of and be aware of because we want to make sure that that continues to grow and improve. Then along with teaching and learning, these are generally ranked higher at the elementary level. That's pretty typical of school environments. But we definitely want to make sure that everybody's feeling comfortable with the content they're teaching and digging into that more closely. So we're really working, you know, we have 5 elementary buildings, 2 middle schools, the high school, so it's always making sure we're all driving towards that same mission. We're providing that consistency. While each of our buildings are unique and have some of their own needs, there are some solid pieces that we want to make sure we're consistent on, and we're continuing to work at those, and you'll see even that coming up later in the evening tonight. So interpersonal relationships, really pretty strong amongst the adults and students. That's consistent. It has been across the years. And Matt alluded earlier that the respect for diversity is very positive, but I think that we can continue to grow in and capitalize off of. Just this last Friday, we had our Institute Day, and I do have to give a shout out to many of our teachers who presented that day. They did a phenomenal job, but I was able to go to the beginning of our ESL teachers did a presentation, and it was a great reminder that we're sharing some statistics at the beginning of their presentation that we have over 1,000 students in our district that speak 2 languages in their home. And that's not to say that they don't all require ESL services, but it's just such a great uniqueness to our district that I think and that's just one small sliver of diversity. So just something that we need to continue to be aware of and make sure that we're recognizing and being aware of. Our environment, parents were the strongest group there, saying that they identify very positively with where things go. Student ratings kind of tend to decline as they get older, and again, that's typical of students, but I think it's, again, same thing, staying positive, staying on top of that. You know, the high school is done, you know, you belong here, the different things to really grow that culture. I mean, Mr. Adrian spoke about the middle schools and the things they're doing, so our schools are doing fabulous things with that, but we just want to continue to make sure our students are feeling confident and feel that it's a great environment for them to be a part of. Staff professional relationships have been consistently ranked high. And this is really where, when you take a look at that process, then that our building levels within their instructional leadership teams will drill down to that building level. We'll take a look at each of these 10 areas. Okay, where do we need to focus as a building? Because it may not necessarily be exactly the same from building to building. And they do a good job of that and digging in to make sure they're meeting their staff needs and student needs. And so ultimately really utilizing this just to make sure we're continuing to meet our mission. So what questions do you guys have?
So I have a question on the social media. So what kind of things to improve that and those scores? Are you ideas, or where are we headed with that?
I think, you know, social media isn't accessed by the students on campus, and I think that's relatively a good thing. I mean, they all can access it on their own via their phones anyhow if they're off of the district Wi-Fi, you know, if you're on a plan. But I think some of that is that awareness. And making sure we start in 3rd grade, it's mandated that they start getting different skills and standards that are related to proper electronic use. But I think as it's just more and more prevalent, we've got to continue to make sure that that's being done not in isolation, so maybe not just in technology courses, but done throughout the day. So that would be one way that we could take a look at that.
And in the questions on the survey, is there anywhere somewhere, in the areas where there are concerns, like social media, or is there a question someplace that says, and I think the school should spend more resources on this problem? Do you know what I mean? Because sometimes you might answer a question and know it's a problem, but also you may think, you know, that's maybe not something that
I don't think it is, but that would be something we could ask. They do allow for some customization, but that does, you know, bring us to a point. This is a rather lengthy survey, so
right. You don't
the state requires us to give a culture and climate survey, and so this is the one that we opted to do when we redid the strategic plan 3 years ago. So that's why we have the 3 years of data here. There is also the 5 Essentials survey that can be given through the state as well, which also measures relatively the same things, but you don't have the ability to provide some of the customizations. It would be a little bit shorter, but that's, you know, a give and take in something. If we wanted to have further discussions on that, we could, and see if that would be something we'd want to take a look at. But then you would probably want to you'd maybe need to do some other survey to get at some of the more specific information we want, because this does allow for some customization.
And is there any way to shorten this one?
No, they state that they need multiple indicators in order to accurately put their
Ask the
numbers
same
together.
question 3 times.
Correct.
Okay.
So each school have their own plan of improvement with this, or is it one master?
Yeah, each year our schools create their own school improvement plans, so then this then becomes a part of that planning process. It's not the only piece, but it's definitely a piece that they examine, yes.
What do you include in that when you look and you're trying to do it? Because I'm looking at the response rates, and you know, one specifically sticks out to me, the how can, we all get so many surveys, right? You said that was lengthy, I didn't actually take it because I don't have children here, but, what are your, do you think that's representative of the parents based on those?
Well,
In the past, it had been around 20% response rate at the high school, but in talking with the analytics people through CSCI, it's an unfortunate consistency among high school. The higher
Yeah.
you go, they taper off.
Because we were
Also-
concerned when we saw that rate come back, and so we talked to them, and they said it's very typical.
also, the computers weren't working during part of that, so.
Was it conferences, right?
Right,
You
during
did
the
that,
conferences.
right.
So I think a lot more people would have participated had they been able to log on right there. Yeah.
That makes sense.
I just have a question. Again, back to the sense of social emotional security and the social media, the two areas for improvement that you're looking at. Do you see any other districts or, I guess, schools using any kind of comprehensive program that kind of teaches throughout the years as far as like the responsibility of social media and the use of it and the dangers of it? You know, you're seeing kids that are not getting scholarships because of things they've posted or participated in, and that, you know, just where are our students getting that indicator, you know, like before middle school, before it becomes a real issue?
Right, it is a part of our curriculum that starts in 3rd grade. So when they go to technology class, that's a part of what I was talking about earlier, but it's just that isolated piece that's related to it's called the ISTE standards. So that relates there, and they get different components of social media throughout that. I mean, and our teachers do a nice job of talking about it too, but I think it's just, we need to continue to inundate them. I'm not aware of any, well, there's one program we looked at, but it was quite pricey. So that would be something else we could continue to explore and take a look at, though.
Yeah, just to take a look at it, which, you know, we're seeing it, obviously it's more and more prevalent, and people posting things, and it's even encouraging some of the, you know, behavior situations because it's something that is postable, it's something that you can record, so.
Right, and
you
once
know.
it's out there, it doesn't go away.
Right, right.
And I know you can't completely control it. I was watching the news the other day, and if you have like parent, you know, those parent back to school meetings,
Yes.
they were advising their students not to get iPhones, telling parents don't get your kids iPhones, buy them flip phones. So there was this move to go towards the flip phones, of course. I
And
mean,
the old texting.
right, no, right, because then you're not on there.
Yeah.
So they said that was kind of trending, you know, you can't, I mean, they're gonna grow, they're gonna want an iPhone eventually, but, you know, you can only do
The
what
longer
you
you can
can.
hold off, the
I
better.
know, right?
Yeah.
Okay, any other questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great information.
Information regarding the out-of-state overnight trip for 8th grade students to Washington DC and Williamsburg, Virginia for June of 2020 is included in the packet. Are there any questions?
I'm just curious how many students are attending from each of the middle schools?
We're looking at about 125 right now for this upcoming trip. I think we're about 34, 35 for middle. We'll go 40, so about 125 total, about 40 from non-middle.
So those numbers have never really changed, have they, from
They've grown a little bit. We were
DMS?
at one point we were in the upper teens, lower 20s. So we're getting in that 40 range right now.
It's been a while. How long, and you've been going for eight years? 9, 8, 9?
That will, the one you're in front of you right now, I think is our 10th year, so it's
Okay.
our 9th trip coming up.
Great. Thank you. Information regarding the out-of-state overnight trip to Milwaukee in March for the Dunlap Eagles robotics team is also included in the packet. Are there questions? And next, Mr. Adrian will present the 3-year academic plan for Dunlap High School.
Okay. So each year in November, we bring new course recommendations to the board for approval. And the way that process works, we come in November. If you guys approve them, then we go back and we make our course selection guides for all of our students to choose from. We get that information out before they go on break. They come back in January, they have a few questions for their counselors. We also have a night for the 8th grade parents to inform them of their choices coming in. And then we start that registration process in February. So that's how that whole process works. The last 3 years, we've brought 15 classes to the board for approval. 2 the first year, 2 the second year, and I think it was 11 this year or 10 this year. And they've been a variety of things. In those 15, there's been 3 advanced placement courses, and the rest of them have been electives. And we had a handful of electives this past year we brought to you because if you recall, we introduced the Illinois Global Scholar Program. And to do that fully, we had to offer a few more options for students to get into. So with that being such an anomaly as far as the number of courses we would bring to you, we had some questions from some board members about, okay, how did these come about? Where do we go from here? And I want you to understand that it takes a lot of work for our teachers to prepare those course offerings, and a lot of thought, a lot of time from our ILT, our instructional leadership team. So when we had those questions, and fortunately you approved all those courses, we said, where do we want to go from here? We don't want to be reactive. I talked with Heather, I said, we don't want to react to what, like, almost at the last minute and respond to these things. Let's get a plan out on paper so that we can get in front of the board, so that we can all agree on a general direction of where we're headed. I think that also helps our departments plan for that as well. They can go into classes knowing what the future looks like. It also gives us an opportunity to train teachers if they need training for the advanced placement courses. So one of the things we continue to hear is we need more advanced placement options, and we know that's part of the AP honor roll. We have to increase our options, increase the access to students for those courses. And we want more honors courses or more access to our sophomore level students. So with a lot of work with Heather and with our department chairs, we came up with a plan to address some of those things. Now, this plan is really advanced placement honors course heavy. It's really what it is. But if you look at it in the grand scheme of things over the last 4 years, we've been really elective heavy and trying to get everybody's interest met. So one of our themes going forward, and we know the mission is to empower individual potential. Well, simply put, we're trying to provide opportunities for students. And they look different we have a diverse group of students, a diverse group of learners, just like the B2 program that we're on board with now. That's a special niche type student. We hear a cry for more advanced placement courses because one, the parents want their students challenged, but two, they also want to get college credit from those courses potentially. So there's a big push for that as well. So we'll just go to the next slide here. And this is our timeline. Again, this is a draft, this is for your input.
Just gonna say, nothing's set in stone, it's really just to kind of make sure we're all moving the same direction.
Right, and we like I said, we want your input on this, but, and I want you to look at these dates because they're kind of confusing. In November of 19, we would bring to the board for approval for the following year. That's how that looks. So in the November of 20, we would bring it to you for approval for the following year. So none of this is happening for next year, all right? So the first one, we would propose an AP Human Geography course. This course was appealing to us because we were able to offer that to a sophomore level student as well. So some of those students we say come through pretty quickly and then they get kind of, well, they're not complacent, but they have no option to go to. This would be an opportunity to challenge them with more rigor. Proposed access to AP Biology. Now this is the one that took us a lot of conversations with our science department. Not entirely comfortable with that, but having a lot of discussion with them, we know that there are sophomore students that are able to do that curriculum, provided they meet a rigorous set of prerequisites, right? Not every student can come in and enroll with that. We can't do that as a school because then we have to slow down our curriculum and that doesn't benefit anybody. That we're not gonna still meet those same benchmarks that we've grown to expect it done on. So we have to have some rigorous prerequisites in place, but knowing if we get a handful of students in that class that are ready, they're gonna be really ready to go in that class, right? So along those lines, if we did that, we'd have to offer an honors chemistry 1 to those students. That's something they would have to have. All the feedback we've got, they have to have good, solid chemistry going into that class. The biology content, part of our prerequisites, they can make that up. We'd have to work on the prerequisites, but it would be very similar to what we did with the cadaver lab, when we had all those parameters set up and only those select few got to that program. So it would be stringent, but we would work with our science department chair on that.
It's important to note too, for them to be successful in that chemistry 1 honors, they would have to be extremely strong in math. So really those prerequisites would be hinging on their math abilities.
But again, these are students, and a little caveat to this is, none of us like to lose students to MSO, right? And these are some of those same students that we maybe lose, and now they're gonna take honors chemistry as a freshman. That's a whole different ballgame for them. So, and then along that, we realign our senior math with transitional math. Okay, so transitional math is a word you'll hear coming up in the future. We've got a class, senior math like that. We just need to tweak a little bit of it to meet the transitional. Heather, you're a little bit more.
Yeah, and that's really to make sure we've got those students that are going into a 2-year degree, say they want to go into ICC, but they have to take the AccuPlacer exam if they didn't take the 4 years of math. And oftentimes those students haven't, they've only taken 3 years. And so we want to make sure that we're bridging that gap for them so they don't have to go into college right away and take a remedial math course that doesn't count for any credits. So we want to make sure we're preparing them. That number has generally been pretty low for us, but we do have a handful, 15 to 20 students that fall into that category that we want to make sure that they're prepared and can get the most out of that.
And we feel obligated to remediate that before they get to college and have to remediate that.
And they have to pay for it.
Exactly. And then the other piece to this is really aligning coursework to what's called the PACE framework. The PACE framework is set up by Illinois, and actually I have it up here, but it's going to be kind of small for you to see. So I'll throw it up here, but we can email this out to each of you too. So it backs us all the way down to 8th grade and takes a look at, let me see if I can make it a little bigger for you here. And we can scroll through. That way you're not totally blinded trying to focus your eyes on that. But it takes a look at the 3 areas of career exploration and development, making sure there's financial literacy is a part of that as well, and then that post-secondary education piece. And it breaks things down into the different areas. And this is really a piece to align with our counselors. They're making sure then that, okay, the student is supported by doing these things up top, and that by the time they leave that grade level, they should be able to do the things that are there below. And so it really kind of backtracks and puts them into category, okay, I know that I want to go on to nursing. And so these are the things that I need to do starting going into my freshman year. And so we've already done some work with several of our counselors and ICC, starting to create some of these pathways, some of these maps. But this is an area that we want to continue to focus on, because regardless of whether you're going to a 4-year institution, a 2-year institution, or out into the workforce, this is going to make sure that all of your bases are covered.
So, yeah.
Go ahead.
No, as this stands, the PACE program, that's going to be a large part of our counseling department's now duties. It's going to be one of their pillars. They're going to evolve around this PACE program to make sure students we're meeting these deadlines, and we're meeting these time frames and checkpoints. Because it's a lot of reconciliation, making sure we're having those meetings with those students. Another thing to think about along those lines is that sorry, I lost my train of thought with that. The counselors reconciling those. I'm sorry, go ahead. Sorry about that.
Well, so my only question is because for some students, they're getting a bit of this, or at least the parents are kind of guiding them, and then the high school takes over with counselors. Because you've got kids that just maybe come from an engineering background, they want to be engineers or they want to be doctors, and they're doing the math, the accelerated math. They're identified, but they really want to do that so it's actually going back to, well, I guess 8th grade. Accelerated math starts in 8th. I was thinking 7th.
Well, 6th.
Well, it does, they can
Well,
start
now
getting
it is,
into
you're
some of
right.
the advanced math in 6th grade.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So, and it could go beyond this too. I mean, just because the framework starts in 8th grade doesn't mean that we can't say, okay, this is where we want our 8th graders to be, but this is also what we're going to do in 6th and 7th grade, even though it's not a part of this particular framework.
Right, and I was thinking 8th grade, they can get high school credit.
Oh, I see.
And so then they can get the full, if they can do that, then they can move to the whole math curriculum.
Right, without having to double up. Because that's
Yes.
what some students end up doing too, if they
Right.
realize, and I guess that's the thing we want to maybe try and help avoid. If you know that that's the direction you want to go, let's get you in there early so that you're not having to play catch up.
Right.
And so where I was going with that is the PACE program and ICC, we're really evolving from the term vocational into CTE, career technical training, or education. So those courses, we have 30 of those courses in our building, including the work-based learning, co-op, culinary arts, family consumer science. So what ICC is trying to do is get those classes clustered into a career track so that when you come in there, you have a variety of experiences in those CTE classes so that you would be more apt to succeed in those classes when you get to ICC. So it's evolving.
Did you say 30?
Yeah,
30?
yeah, 30 CTE classes.
And, yeah, and that's a good point too, because we are right now talking about, enhancing the AP offerings, but you guys have looked at the demographics, right? So, and we're talking about we're trying to provide academic opportunities for all students. The vocational is what percentage of our student
Well,
population?
if you look at last year's school profile card that we our council redid in October, it'll show you that 66% of our students applied to a 4-year university, 29 to a 2-year. That's 95% of our students have plans to go post-secondary, right? And then we had 3% going to the military. So that leaves us with about 2% of our students who don't have any plans at the current time. But what that means is, we have the work-based learning program, which if you're not familiar with it, we offer the construction, the CNA, very popular courses, and they've grown over the last several years. And the construction program gets them experience in 8 different trades. So they have, we can't do that in our building, give them exposure to that, but that program can. So they can, if they want to be a metal worker, they have the opportunity to try that. If they want to be an electrical worker, they can have the opportunity to try that. the CNA program, they get to come out of there and have the opportunity to pass that test for a certified nursing assistant, which we get a lot of positive feedback on that. So those are some things that are a little bit different than what we're proposing tonight, but still opportunities that students have.
Which we've addressed with at least 30 course offerings.
Right.
Yeah.
And the
That's pretty
co-op,
significant.
the co-
90, do you say 99%?
Not,
2%.
66% 4-year, 29 2-year, yeah, that's 95%.
that's huge.
Yeah, so, yeah.
And the co-op program, that's for anybody though, right?
Yes,
They
yeah.
can get it, they
And
can
last
find
year
a
we
job,
had-
an internship, get high school credit for that as well as on the
And
job.
Rose on the job training, and we worked with Caterpillar on some placements for some internships there. And we had ATS come in last semester, and they talked about, they're really interested in our robotic students. Those are the students that they're interested in employing because they have a different skill set, they have a different interest. So, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of, we try to provide a lot of different opportunities. So, and we go down to November of 2020, we'd like to bring AP Environmental Science. That would be available to 10th grade, 11th grade, and 12th grade. The neat thing about that environmental science is it's got a bio component, a chemistry component, what's the other one? Earth science, and it's also got the really neat piece of the governmental part of that. So figuring out ways to lobby and to protect the environment and do it within the parameters of the law. So I think that's a neat.
I wonder too if that one helps with the science component of like ACT and SAT.
Yeah, that's a good
It
question.
could, I don't know, I'd have to check on that and see. It might draw in a different demographic of students. I mean, it might be those who maybe wouldn't normally take an AP course, but might think, hey, this would be a good chance to try an AP course at the 10th grade level, get familiar with the structure of an AP course, and then feel more confident going into their junior or senior year also.
Yeah, from the research the science department did, they felt that would be a really good entry-level AP course for a student to be acclimated to that process for. And then also proposed the AP Art History. That would open access to the 10th graders as well to another AP course. And then we want to play this ICC dual credit biology, kind of play it tentatively to see how this AP bio takes off in the previous year. But that's still on the table for that as well. Then we move on to November 2021, and we want to propose the AP Government. The neat thing about this course is it also meets the civics requirement. So that's a course that's a really similar content, different rigor level, that they can get the civics requirement for and get the AP credit for. And that's also would be open to 10th graders. So if you look at the way we've evolved, I'm going to go to the next one.
Yeah, sorry.
Sorry. So in the fall of 2017, we had 13 AP courses offered. And, if this plan were to hold place, we'd have 20 of them by the year 2022. And again, if you notice, there's open access to those sophomore students that, we've heard a lot about having access to those opportunities for. And, I'm not saying everybody, but some people are reluctant to open up those classes to the sophomores. But at the end of the day, if they're capable to do that work, they're capable to do that work. And that's why the prerequisites are important.
I want to thank you for being responsive to those requests. And I know it's not always easy because everybody always wants more.
Yeah.
I really do appreciate you trying to put it to, a plan. So
Yeah.
thank you for your work.
Well, again, this is for your input. This is something we thought was feasible, and it was measured how we laid this out. It wasn't something we just said, oh, let's do this. It was something we thought about and making sure we're servicing all of our students. But at the end of the day, we think our students are capable. And somebody brought up and I wasn't here when you did it, but you changed the requirements for valedictorian, right? To limit the number of valedictorians. Well, guess what? 2017, we had 15 make that bar. And then last year we had 9. So the point is, you set the standard and our students rise to that occasion and achieve that standard. So this isn't for everybody. Just like the D2 program is not for everybody. But the opportunity to do that would certainly be there.
So I hope now that the focus kind of shifts, and I think it has, right, to the middle school and elementary school, because they need to do what they need to do to solidify that knowledge base.
Yes.
So that they will be able to take these courses.
Absolutely, and so that's really where it's setting the goal. Okay, this is where they're going to be at the high school level, and then we can build how are we going to get them to that goal.
Yeah, and I feel the same way. You guys have done an excellent job, and very analytically, and you're really helping kids that are in this particular area excel, and I think that's what our district mission statement's about.
A lot of credit goes to the ILT teachers at the high school and their departments for really, opening their minds and taking a look at things from a different perspective, which isn't always easy to do, but they've done a nice job with that.
Yeah, excellent. Good job.
Thank you so much.
Very nice, thank you.
Okay, technology plan is included in the packet.
Right, so, several years ago, we brought the different one-to-one programs, so this would be the final year of the rollout for grades K through 3, and it has changed a little bit from the initial plan. Initially thought that we would be 1 to 2 at grades, kindergarten and first grade with iPads, and so lots of different things have been tried out with our lower grade teachers, and one of the challenges that they ran into was the login issue. It's very difficult for kids, especially when it comes to sharing devices, and everything, regardless of whether you're on Google or whether you're on Canvas or whether you're on Seesaw, is all related to your own individual login. And so we took a look at having a first grade teacher pilot utilizing one-to-one Chromebooks, and then we took some of our kindergarten teachers on a visit to a neighboring district to talk with some other kindergarten teachers that were utilizing Chromebooks, and they really felt that that would be just as effective as the iPads. And so the rollout plan that we have here for you is utilizing Chromebooks across the board. So it would be K through 12. This phase of the rollout is for grades K through 3. Now this phase is a little different than our other ones because all of the devices would stay at school. None of these would be going home. And so as a part of that plan, there are carts to be purchased for each classroom because they need a place to store them, a place for them to be charged, a place to be safe. So there's no case cost, but there is that cart charge that goes along with that. So ultimately that's the nuts and bolts of the plan. I guess, what questions do you guys have for me?
Just how is it going overall? In general, is it the plan being implemented the way you thought? Are things coming along? I know there was a lot of back and forth, even with the board, and just how that would go. And how are you feeling? With
Usage is definitely up. Of course, we never want to say that we're just using them for the sake of using them. So it's figuring out how that they're applying them in the classroom. And we have 3 phenomenal instructional technology coaches who go into our classrooms and work very closely with our teachers. They have learning appointments that teachers can sign up for on a daily basis. They run quarterly PLCs with each of our buildings, teaching them new strategies and different things that they can implement in the classroom. That is one change from the initial rollout plan until now. Initially, we thought, we'll see in staffing later, that maybe we would be adding some more of those instructional technology coaches, and we've decided that we're okay with the 3 we have right now. They've really been servicing the entire district, working with all the teachers regardless of whether or not they had one-to-one devices, because our other teachers have been utilizing some other older carts that are ready to be recycled once this goes into place. So I feel it's going well. I feel we're growing. There's still room to grow, but it's definitely going well.
What about the part where we would have students working on the maybe the fixing the equipment, or?
So there is the computer maintenance course that's here at the high school, and it's in the first year. They've had a few bumps along the way, but one of our technology guys, actually one of our actual tech guys who's not a teacher, goes out every Tuesday and works with the classroom teacher and brings them different broken computers to fix and shows them different skills and things that they're doing there. So they're not doing the actual repair of our current devices at this point, but if that continues to grow, that could be an option.
Any other questions?
Will they ever be able to print from the Chromebooks? I know that was a high school problem, probably middle school. They get everything on there and you can't. They were going to print, and I'm like, why are you doing that on your phone? And she said, because I can't print from
Lead
the
away from printing because that could be an
for the
extreme
school.
additional cost at school.
See, I'm just talking at home.
Yes. So, and the hard part is once that's shut off, it's shut off. So there are still devices in all of our libraries though where they do have access to go and print if there's something they need to turn in for class. A lot of our teachers though have gone to an online turn-in process via Canvas as well. So that's an area that's continuing to grow.
That makes sense though.
Yep. Yeah.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you very much. Information regarding the renewal of the district's internet agreement is included in the packet. Are there any questions? Several job descriptions are included in the packet for newly approved special education positions. Are there any questions? Next, we have the staffing requests for the 1920 school year. I'd like to mention that Mrs. Bowman will be presenting an overview of the requests, and a more in-depth discussion will take place in closed session. I'd like to ask board members to refrain from asking detailed questions in open session that may pertain to the confidentiality of specific employees.
Okay, it's staffing season. It was spring training, staffing season, same time of year. So we've taken a look at what some of our needs are across the district, and that's what I'm here to share with you today, and then hopefully we can move forward with that. So when it comes to our elementary school needs, there generally is from year to year some fluctuation in the number of sections that we need, just based off of not necessarily due to increasing enrollments, but where the numbers fall, especially our caps at the K2 level. We try and generally keep around 25 students, but then through 5 we go up to 30, so that can create, some need for additional sections. So we're looking at probably needing an additional 3 sections in elementary next year based off of current numbers rolling up, but we had a couple sections this year that we did not fill, that were left within the budget. And so that was just due to the fact that we didn't have the numbers to warrant those sections. And then we have a couple others. So that's really, it's a wash. There wouldn't be any additional dollars necessary in order to shift some of that current staff at those K-5 levels. The one request that we are making is for a .7875 FTE general music teacher. This kind of goes back to the days of the budget mitigation when a lot of the music positions were cut. One of the challenges that our music teachers face is when you take a look at our we have several general music teachers, but then we have 4 teachers that do a split, 2 band, 2 orchestra, and split the district. But they start their day at the elementary buildings, but they have to end their day at the middle school buildings due to study halls, and that's when those classes take place at the middle school level. So contractually, they have to be on the middle school schedule, but the elementary school day starts much earlier. So fitting in the different lessons and general music classes, scheduling gets very, very tight. And so this would allow for some flexibility in that scheduling to allow them to be where they need to be. Our high school orchestra also has had phenomenal numbers, and when that first kicked off, we had one of our staff members who was able to be at the high school regularly. We've had to cut back on that, so this would allow for that person to be there and to assist at the high school level as well. Middle school needs, obviously with redistricting, we've had a little bit of shifting. So we did move 6 internal candidates due to redistricting. Of those 6, 4 were brand new positions at DVMS. But remember, all 6 of those then are no longer at Dunlap Middle School. So again, that was a shift. We'll be doing a little redistributing of the office assistant staffing there as well. So that's a wash when it comes to money. And then reassigning the .5 assistant principal position at DMS that was there this year just for those numbers. And then we will need to be adding some additional custodial staff just to meet building growth needs at Dunlap Valley when you're adding, 10 classrooms in space. We want to keep it clean, we want to take care of it. So that personnel down below there would be for that custodial staff.
Both of those or
Correct.
just one? Okay.
They both are, yes.
So just on the staff, there are no new middle school teachers being hired?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Very good, that's what we were told a long time ago.
Well, we were hoping. I was keeping my fingers
Well, you
crossed,
thought it
Ryan,
might
so.
be a little bit, yeah.
Yeah. And then we need to take a look at our high school needs. This oftentimes depends on student request. So while enrollment isn't projected to necessarily go up at the high school level, where those student courses are request, this is where we have some fluctuation. So we do have the need for a .66 FTE in art due to course requests. And then we do have a need for a 1 FTE special education teacher, and that's based off of current IEPs and numbers. We also have the need for 1 math overload as well. So that's just 1 hour a day that we would need to have a math teacher in an overload position at the high school level.
And is this accounting for, is the special ed teacher for that classroom where students have, can capture classes that they didn't pass, or is
It's
this
not for the
credit
Eagle Ed, it's not for the
credit-
alternative ed, no,
okay.
it's for actual special education needs.
Okay.
And they do a lot of co-teaching at the high school, so they're out in the classrooms, and they're also supporting students individually through resource needs. And then when we take a look at district staffing, along with the one-to-one rollout, we do still feel strongly, though, that we do need that technology support staff. So that's a non-certified position to aid our technology department. If you're infusing another 13 to 1,400 devices into the district, we want to make sure that those are being adequately taken care of. And then I did put a 1 FTE Spanish teacher under district because we have a need for some of it at the high school, but in order to alleviate some of those overloads, this person could be spread to some other levels as well. If we were able to find the right person, what a struggle that can be. We could possibly reinstate some of those additional 4th and 5th grade classes from the 1 day a week to 2 days a week. So that's something that we're kind of keeping a close eye on. Those foreign language classes can fluctuate, but we would like to request a full FTE foreign language teacher there as well. So overall, that puts us at a total addition, certified and non-certified, of 6.45 FTE for a total cost there of $280,145.27. What questions do you have?
Well, so it looks like the majority of your FTEs are directly on the ground. You
Yes,
know, educating our
working with
students.
students,
And that's
absolutely.
great, yeah,
Yeah.
that's great to see.
Any other questions?
No, just great job, I think overall, just minimizing the change, and I know that takes a lot of work to try to put all the things into that, so I appreciate that.
Thank you very much,
Thanks.
Heather.
Thanks, Heather.
Okay, the annual renewal of the regulatory basis agreement for the district's auditor is available for the board's review. Are there any questions? Information is included in the packet regarding the bulk supply bid process. Any questions on that? Okay, information regarding the 2019 summer projects is included in the board packet. Are there any questions?
But there wasn't a list, right?
Just that he'll providing us an update.
In the next few weeks.
Yeah, but it's coming.
That's right.
Okay, this concludes the information discussion item segment of the meeting, and we'll now move on to the consent agenda. Are there any questions or discussion regarding items on the consent agenda? I have a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
It's been moved by Abby Humble, seconded by Brian Zowen. Is there any discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Humbles? Sowen?
Aye.
Blue? Aye. Bozeman?
Aye.
Disharu?
Aye.
Olshauser? Aye. Reed?
Aye. Okay, motion carries. We will now move on to the action items. The bill list, treasurer's report, and district investment report are included in the board packet. Are there any questions?
So Damon, quick question. Can we look at next time, looking at our fund balances and what you would feel are some long-term, the cash balance in there, what we could maybe open up a Schwab account or some investment in those other funds? Because the Ed fund now has 17 million in it in Schwab. So we're trying to figure out, maybe give us some ideas as to.
Yeah, one thing I would probably request, Dr. Dearman and I were talking about this earlier this week, is has there ever been a discussion with the board as to what our goal is, for example, in that Schwab account? Do we have a target that we're working towards?
I think we did talk about just making sure that at least the cash, the money that comes in from property taxes, that what we can invest in short-term investments is, and that we only keep in our checking and savings account the money that we need for the monthly expenses, plus a little extra. You know, I think they said, what, 3 months worth? I can't remember the exact amount. In case there's an emergency.
90 days cash on hand. So we're talking
I
about-
can't remember. There was some, it was 2 months, 3 months, but that then the rest be invested in short term.
Or what you think is a safe amount.
Right.
I think you know the needs.
Sure, so that's the short term.
Right.
Was it
But the long term, so we have about 7 months in the Ed fund in the Schwab, right? Right now, I think when you look at the numbers. So I guess we looked at you guys to say, in the Ed fund is 7 months and reserves the right number. And then the other funds, what is it? Is it 3 months, 2 months? I don't know, but I think we'll look to you guys to say, because our balances are pretty full right now, or at least at the end of last year. Is there some money we can take out of there and invest longer term? I don't know. You guys maybe can come back with some ideas for that.
Well, I was gonna say, in the past, I think it was driven a lot by your rating, and you wanted to maintain your rating based on reserves. You know, and it's often, 6 months, and then you start going 5, 4, and then your rating goes down.
But I was thinking that for the short-term investments, and maybe I have this wrong, but I thought you put money in the short term that you know you're gonna need for the year, plus a little bit extra. And then I don't understand, why can't the rest of it go in the Schwab? Is there a reason why it can't?
There's not a reason, no.
Okay.
I think I would just ask for some guidance on what is that
Okay.
amount that we want in long-term investments? Do we have a goal that we're gonna get to, and then from then on out, what is the plan once we reach that amount?
I see. Okay.
Yes,
Okay.
we can certainly talk about that.
Do you think it would be helpful if you came up with a recommendation for us of what you think,
Sure.
and then we maybe have an information item?
Because we can very easily project what monthly expenses are and then give a cushion, a buffer on top of that, very easily. But we haven't been, there's specific language on board investments and policies, but there's nothing as far as a directive from the goal of the board is, this is where we would like to see it go, or don't exceed this amount so as to keep this much, 90 days working cash in hand.
Well, I think even go back to what Cheryl said, in the past, we've had this benchmark of 6 to 8 months in your ed fund and reserves. Is kind of and again, that's kind of what you're referring to, that we used to
Because
kind of
it affects-
adhere
it
to.
impacts your
And we're
rating.
there now, but I just don't know on the other buckets, what's the right number.
Well, I think are you talking about the state rating or fiscal
It
rating?
impacts,
or-
yeah.
So,
okay.
yeah,
It
we only,
impacts us financially.
But if you have that money, regardless of where it is, you still have the money.
Oh.
So it shouldn't impact
I
your
think
score
the
with
only thing that we
state.
get a ding on is our debt.
The long-term debt.
Well, and that was another, so if maybe it's more beneficial to start paying down some of the debt that we have. I don't know what that would look like. Maybe
Yeah,
that's
I
an
think-
idea, maybe it's not.
I
but-
think you need to be bring
right.
us best practices from a
Is that-
financial
okay, we'll
perspective
definitely
to
do that.
guide
I
us.
just wanted to make sure that before we got here, if there was any discussion on, is there a target amount for the long term? And if not, then we can certainly come up with a tool.
Yeah, I think come up with
Yeah,
ideas
I
of what
think
you
you-
think is the
And
right amount.
my inclination would be to put as much in there as we can, making sure that we have enough for the yearly expenses.
Yes, and then as far as the short term goes, we're doing a 2-month buy on those right now, and then once we get to June, we'll get that first large property tax payment, and that's when we'll really bump up that short term, because we'll have more cash on hand than we need at that point in time to take us through the year.
Okay.
Good.
Great.
Yeah,
Any other?
I just want to say, I appreciate you asking the question, and, as long as I've been here, there's been no specific board discussion on those directives or any kind of specific goal to be reached. And even more so, I think that yourself being an expert in the field, working with Dr. Dearman and perhaps getting some outside counsel on where we should be as a district, remembering that we are a school, specifically, and then just making sure that we're following all those policies and procedures. And I think that guidance should come from you as a recommendation to us, as opposed to us, having any input in that. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, could I have a motion then to approve payment of the bills?
I move to approve payment of bills, the bill list treasurer's, I'm sorry. I move to approve payment of bills in the amount of $6,601,679.14 as presented.
It's been moved by Cheryl Bluth, seconded by Teresa Holzhauser. Is there any discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Bluth?
Aye.
Holzhauser? Aye. Bozeman?
Aye.
Disharu?
Aye.
Humbles? Reed?
Aye.
Zawin?
Aye.
Motion carries. The student handbooks for 2019-20 are included in the packet. Are there any questions or discussion? I had some concerns with the remediation section of this. I'm just concerned not having enough data to really back up extending this over to the other middle schools. So I appreciate all the data that was provided. Do we have any additional as of today, or is that all out?
No, I've given you everything I've got.
Okay.
4 different sets.
Okay. So, yeah, that was my concern with it. So I'd rather not see a movement towards that to DMS. I've had some parents express concerns with the remediation component. My feeling is that, and it's pretty simple, it's kind of old school, but when you make it easier for kids, I'm not necessarily sure that it's better for them. And so I really believe that making it tougher on them and having them have to have the discipline of studying for the first time for a test is really better for them. I think it prepares them better for high school, where there's not a lot of remediation, and also prepares them better for college, and of course for life, where you don't get a lot of do-overs in jobs. So that's a concern I have with the handbook. I have no other concerns with it. I did have a question though on the sports section. Did we take out that line about moving up? I didn't see it in there. Playing up?
It's in there under the individual sports.
Oh, okay.
It's in there under the cut sports, so you'll see that sentence there under those.
Okay, okay. And was this something that did the athletic advisory committee or coaches have any input on this?
I spoke to the high school coaches and I spoke to the athletic leadership team. Antonio and I talked about this for a while yesterday. He
So should we hold off on approving this?
No.
Okay.
It's good.
And just a question, because I know we received some data information on the program at DMS that included remediation, opportunities to take a test over as you learn, and then you secure that piece of it. And the name of the program is slipping my mind.
Oh, standard.
Standards-based grading. I was thinking evidence-based learning, standards-based grading. So the data, when you boil it down, the data shows that those students that are used in that program are performing better, both at the middle school level and the high school level, right? You had the STAR.
I wouldn't say better across the board. I would say there's no evidence to support that they're doing any worse. They're pretty much equivalent across the board in every data set that I've provided today. But mathematically speaking, the data sets are so small. There's so many factors that go into student achievement, and to say that, well, standards-based grading or redos, retakes leads to this, grades or student success, you just can't do that. There are so many other factors that go into it too. So to say there's causation there, mathematically it's just not sound. It's a piece, but I promise you it's a very minute, very small piece. Remediation has been done for years. Anybody that's got a high school student here, I would assume they've taken the ACT multiple times. They've probably hired tutors to come in and, if your student took it the first time and you get the grade or the score they wanted, so I'm gonna get some tutoring. I mean, that's a big business in this area. We've had people present at our meetings that they do that. So that's not uncommon. It's very common in our area. That is a form of remediation, redo, retake. A lot of that's already happening at the middle school. It's not part of the package program. But now it's taking two buildings that are in different spots and trying to bring them together. There are very similar practices already in place. Mrs. Bowman has surveyed the middle school staff who's in a different place than what DVMS is at, and the results were very, very positive and good information. So they get it. It's just the implementation of this was not done simultaneously, so we're kind of got a seesaw effect going. We're trying to get it balanced out.
And I think it's important to note too that remediation it's just a good practice in general. It's not directly tied to standards-based grading. And I think it's gotten tied in our district to that because of the differences in the middle schools, but remediation is a practice regardless of, whatever kind of grading you're utilizing that can be very effective and beneficial.
So the problem sometimes with strong students is that they don't ever study for the test because they know that they can retake it if they do poorly. So they just don't study the first time, and then maybe they do well, and then they never study for the test. And so it ends up being a big transition to go from middle school where, and I don't know if this has changed since my daughter was there, where there's not a lot of grading for homework, there's not a lot of studying for the test, and then to go to high school and have honors classes and AP courses and a much more rigorous program. It's a huge jump to go from that 8th grade where there's not as much work going on to high school if you want to take a bunch of honors classes. It's just a big transition at a time when high school's already a big transition, just social, emotionally, and all the other things. So that's another concern I have.
I'm going to offer a counterpoint. My daughter, Sophia, she's doing wonderful in high school, and she's DVMS with her stuff. She's straight A's, was never a straight A at DVMS, and she's doing wonderful stuff.
But I think what the goal for, and I don't want to speak for DMS or Heather, but I am at the high school, so I see both students. And our goal is to maintain or establish some resemblance of consistency throughout the district. It may not look exactly the same.
Right.
We're not standard-based, and DMS isn't standard-based, but if remediation, and we can communicate that clearly to our families and our students, what it looks like at the high school, that consistency alleviates some of those stressors, some of those changes coming across. But it's just, we're not going to do the same all things, but we have to have some level of consistency, some level of common language, so we all understand each other, and then communicate that to families.
So the only piece this conversation is turning into a conversation about standards-based grading when we're talking about handbooks. But remediation has been around forever, right? And teachers are going to do what teachers are going to do. and I've been talking to Mr. Okers, he's the one I go to when I explain remediation at the high school level, because I think he does it well. I already told him his ears should be burning because we've been talking about him. But remediation is different, and as long as someone mentioned something, I don't know who it was, but when you want to retake that test, it can't be made easy for the student because you really want them to have to study for that, because you do want them to learn those concepts, right? I mean, and they do. I don't know if they should be able to get an A. I mean, you can't retake it until you get an A, because what is that compared to with the A for the other student who got the A, who it comes naturally to? But that's not for us to discuss. So there is a way to do it, and I don't know why this is in the handbook. It's never been in the handbook before, so I don't know if, I would hate for a parent to come into the school and say, it says right here.
Actually, remediation has been a part of the
Really?
handbook.
Okay,
Yes,
okay.
there was different language in there. In the original, last month in the information, I believe we had the struck language, but because to the action portion, we removed that part. But there was language
Okay,
in both middle school handbooks regarding.
I didn't notice that.
And so will the
but-
teachers at DMS be required to offer remediation?
Under these parameters, yes.
And if they want to, right? I mean,
There's a lot of flexibility in here, but there needs to be some consistency between the buildings, and this was the best way that we could achieve that.
And I understand the needs for consistency, so I appreciate that. I'd just rather have it go the other way.
Right, I just wanted to make two comments. One, when you spoke earlier about high school, and you said 66% of the students are looking to go to a 4-year college, and 29% are looking to go to a 2-year college.
Right.
I mean, the majority of our students are looking to go on to a secondary education.
Right.
So, I mean, for us to take the position that remediation is something that they would look to do, or that they would want to be lazy or want to not study, it's just not it's not the makeup of this school body. So I think that our students do want to succeed, and they will study. And for those that may not think that they need to at 8th grade, when you get to high school, then the rubber meets the road, right?
Exactly.
And then you figure out that, okay, this is a different process, and that's a part of life too, right? Just learning and gaining. So, and I think that it's just a lot of time and effort's been put into this and trying to bring the schools together, and so we have some consistency throughout the district. And, I just don't think that that's something that we should challenge at this point in a handbook. This is not the place for that.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Okay, is there a motion to approve the handbooks?
I move to approve the 2019-20 student handbook as presented.
Second.
It's been moved by Abby Humble, seconded by Cheryl Booth. Any discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Humbles? Aye. Bluth?
Aye.
Disharum?
No.
Holzhauser? Aye. Bree?
Aye.
Samwin?
Aye.
Postman?
Aye.
Motion carries. This concludes the action items portion of the meeting. Could I please have a motion to adjourn to closed session?
I move to adjourn to closed session for the following purpose as stated in the Open Meetings Act: the appointment, employment, compensation, and performance of specific employees, student disciplinary cases, discussion of minutes of meetings lawfully closed, security procedures, and collective negotiating matters.
It's been moved by Beth Reed, seconded by Teresa Holzhauser. Any discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Reed?
Aye.
Holzhauser? Aye. Humbles? Aye. Samwin?
Aye.
Bluth?
Aye.
Postman?
Aye.
Disharum? Aye. Motion carries. Thank you all for attending. We're adjourned to closed session. Could I have a motion to approve the Human Resources consent agenda?
I'll make a motion to approve the human resources for
Second.
2018-2020.
Okay.
Sorry.
It's been moved by Abby, seconded by Cheryl. Any discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Humbles?
Aye.
Bluth?
Aye.
Reed?
Aye.
Samwin?
Aye.
Postman?
Aye.
Disharum?
Aye.
Holzhauser? Aye.
Okay, motion carries. Could I have a motion to approve the leave of absence request as presented?
I move to approve the, I just had my finger on it. I move to approve the leave of absence request for a teacher as presented.
Here, feedback.
Second.
It's been moved by Beth Reed, seconded by Brian Zowen. Any discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Reed?
Aye.
Samwin?
Aye.
Bluth?
Aye.
Postman?
Aye.
Disharum?
Aye.
Holzhauser? Humbles?
Motion carries. Could I have a motion, please, to approve the next leave of absence request as presented.
I move to approve the leave of absence request for a teacher as presented.
Second.
It's been moved by Beth Reed, seconded by Don Bozeman. Any discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Reed. Aye.
Bozeman.
Aye.
Blue.
Aye.
Disharum.
Aye.
Olszewski. Humbles.
Aye.
Motion carries. Could I have a motion to approve the closed session minutes?
The regular board meeting of January 16th, 2019 is presented.
Second.
It's been moved by Teresa Holzhauser, seconded by Don Bozeman. Any discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Olszewski. Bozeman.
Aye.
Disharum.
Aye.
Humbles. Reed.
Aye.
Samhain.
Aye.
Blue.
Aye.
Motion carries. Is there a motion to adjourn?
I move to adjourn.
Is there a second?
A second. Oh,
It's been
maybe
moved by
I'll give it to
Cheryl
Dawn.
Booth, seconded by Beth Reed. Any discussion? Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say nay. Motion carries. We are adjourned at 8.
That guy.